A fashion designer's impact goes beyond the runway. They change the way we look at ourselves and those around us. Video Fashion Designers chronicles their past successes and follows their evolution into the 21st century.
I don't think of the world as being this, that, or the other thing. It's like just one world. And and I can't help but be influenced by the places that I lived and the things that I know.
Marc Jacobs, king of all that is downtown cool, has survived a lion's share of ups and downs in the fashion business and has managed to consistently land on his feet. In 1984, Jacobs was plucked from New York City's Parsons School of Design by Robert Duffy to start his own line.
I remember sitting in the audience just so bored, and all of a sudden these 3 sweaters came out and they were just so well done and so funny. It was purely original and there was humor in it, but there was also this integrity and equality that I knew somebody put thought into it.
Marc was hired by the all-American brand Perry Ellis in 1985. But after several years there, he was fired for his infamous but critically acclaimed grunge collection for spring-summer 1993.
Even though the grunge collection was a commercial disaster for Marc Jacobs, it did inspire a whole idea about dressing and a kind of a more youthful approach to fashion at every level of the market and for every customer.
A highlight of Marc's career came when the French house of Louis Vuitton appointed him as artistic director in 1997, and he was successful in overseeing the house's first foray into clothing design. Then in 2001, as well as in 2007, his substance abuse issues made headlines.
I don't regret anything I ever did in the past, but I lived pretty fast and I went out a lot and I drank a lot and did, other substances I shouldn't have been doing. Or, you know what, I shouldn't even say I shouldn't have been doing. It was what I needed to do or what I felt I had to do.
He has been producing the fashion industry's most covetable creations, and as his long list of accomplishments grows, so does his adoring and oftentimes high-profile fan club. As Marc Jacobs entered the 21st century, he began to amass an unprecedented number of awards, a direct reflection of the provocative designer's devotion to his craft and his constant need to question the status quo. Today, Marc Jacobs is a worldwide fashion phenomenon. As his winter collection arrived backstage and final details were being completed, Marc Jacobs succinctly summed up his goal when it comes to designing.
We just all reevaluate each season, like what we want to say and what we want to do, what kind of clothes we want to put out there in the world. There was this feeling of like creating an urban sort of street, again, a street sort of sensibility, but using couture fabrics and beautiful fabrics, and a kind of glamour to a covered up sort of layered glamour, something that was very, very rich, but not rich in an opulent sort of way, and almost beautiful in its peculiarities.
I thought Marc Jacobs was exceptional and challenging. At first it was it took a moment to get used to. Those thick knits, the lots of layering, the colors that were all sort of muddy. But I felt like he was doing something new and it was really provocative. So that's a collection I think is going to stay with me a long time. I'm going to think about it a lot, but there was a lot of layering and a lot of piling on of things.
It's completely brilliant. I think it was, for me, one of his best shows in years. I mean, I can't remember a show that I thought was such a moving and poetic statement from him. The idea that you could wear your entire wardrobe for a week on your body at one time is so, it's quite new, it's quite modern in a way. It completely devastated me. I was thrilled.
Remarkable for him to move way beyond where he's been, and I loved it that he kind of went back to his own roots. The grunge so perfectly modernized. It had the feeling of reality, of the streets.
The grunge collection of years ago was specifically inspired by a music scene that was happening. This collection wasn't inspired necessarily by music. It was, like I said, by fragments of all these things I know, as well as like fashion over the years. So it's bits of 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, 80s, 90s, 2000. You know, it's like all that stuff, couture, street, everything.
I like the way he challenges himself and really tries to push himself always in a new direction. And he really tries to find his own way, and that's creativity.
In New York, Marc Jacobs, the king of urban cool, was deep into setting a bucolic stage for his summer collection. For Marc, his highly attended shows have evolved into more than your standard runway setup.
The audience itself is so diverse, and there's so many eclectic and colorful people within the audience that I feel like I have to entertain people.
Light was the buzzword at Marc Jacobs for spring 2007. For the designer, that simple word said it all.
There's really no explanation. I mean, I can explain that I just felt like after the winter, where everything was like kind of a nomad urban sort of feeling to it, and it was very covered in plaids and wools, that it felt nice to do something very fresh and very generous and very open and light. And so the choice of fabrics, you know, were supportive of that, and even the layering it was layering of laces and eyelets and linens and gauzes.
I thought that it was a spectacular show. He's a showman, and he really knows how to create a mood and just transport you into his world. And by the time you're walking out the door, you feel like you've just encountered this whole new way of dressing and being. I mean, it's really sort of magical. And then you sort of need a cold splash of water to really think about the clothes you've just seen.
Marc Jacobs was a standout collection. The overall mood of that collection was just gorgeous, beautifully executed and feminine, and it moved so beautifully. However, that said, which I am his biggest fan, and it was like perfection, there were pieces that I'm not sure who could wear them or where you would wear them, especially some of the dhoti pants and things.
Sexy doesn't have to mean a pair of tight pants or a low-cut dress. I think it's very beautiful and much more interesting to see a girl's body, you know, through a big transparent sort of voluminous pant than it is to see it in a tight knee-length skirt at the moment.
It's so individual that he somehow personifies the person that he's thinking of at the moment. Everyone finds themselves in one of his collections, really.
I don't do it alone. I do it with the help of a lot of great and talented people. You know, I and we do what we feel. And we don't know that it'll please people, but we know that we do it with integrity and passion, and because we love it. They're not being tricked. You know, they're not being fooled. It's like something that does come from someone's heart.
Marc Jacobs was fabulous. It was a poetic dream. Absolutely wonderful. An inspiration. I'm still feeling high because it was so beautiful.
Nobody expects the understated from Marc Jacobs. From the intense runway rehearsals to the meticulous makeup and hair, the audience has grown to expect a fashion spectacular. And the excitement continued. A grand curtain was dramatically pulled back to reveal a stunningly precise and elegant tableau. A stark contradiction to the more downtown spirit of past seasons.
There was a lot of awe when it opened, and precision, and all his influence that he's shown. And I think that it shows talent.
It was time for a certain polish and a refinement and a sophistication. And I also like the idea of this sort of fetishist, this fetish obsession almost for perfection.
Marc Jacobs was such a powerful collection, and I loved the strictness of it, the austerity of it, and the lean quality. It seemed very post-Mussolini. There's just the whole influence of it. There was a somber quality to it, but it was an interesting use of bright color in a very somber way. There were sequins, but the sequins weren't, you know, Happy New Year's Eve sequence. There was something very, very severe about it.
It was obviously a sort of rather interesting celebration of American sportswear and of the sort of values of American sort of working women's wardrobe. I thought he did it in a brilliant way. I think there's an awful lot of clothes and bags there people are going to want. And those were not frivolous clothes. They were serious, smart, intelligent, problem-solving clothes. The clothes you showed could look as, you know, essential for a club as they do for an office. It's all about how you style them and the attitude you bring to them.
I'm always thrilled, and just, I think everything is so gorgeous that he does.
Oh man, I thought that collection was beautiful. Really, really nice. It was amazing how much work went into it, you know, and I was really, really impressed. Incredible artistry, I thought.
We wanted to do something flawless, you know, and that's what I think we did. Yeah, it was just very precise.
Starting his Spring-Summer 2008 presentation in reverse, from designer bow to finale, and with a run of show in rewind, the already controversial Jacobs continued to fan the fashion flames.
What was amazing to me is, like, as an experiment, to see people's reaction, how sort of this even has become a discussion. It's just like proof of how ridiculous this all is. It's like, I cannot believe that people could sit through a show like that and look at those clothes and say, why did you do it backwards? For that to be a question to me is so telling of how, like, kind of nothing has changed in fashion. It's like, you know, just people never look past what they see. They just don't get any deeper. It's really kind of sad.
The thing about Marc, which I really like, is he has the courage to do things that nobody else is doing, you know, and not play it safe. And you may be criticized for it, or you may be applauded, but in the end, it's going to take you to a better place. So that's what I liked about the show.
I think that Marc Jacobs is probably one of the best American designers that there is. Super innovative, always on the cusp. You know, he like really, really embodies the word pioneer. He's taken American fashion to a totally different level.
He's just so creative, and the clothes make you feel great. They're comfortable, and they're original and sexy, and whatever you want them to be. He does it all.
I was really just thinking about sex and how people define sexy today. And I guess, you know, it's just my take on what popular culture believes is sexy, which, you know, I don't necessarily agree with. I mean, I don't think what sexy has anything to do with clothing, but it was a nice catalyst to sort of think about that, and then to use those things that so clearly are what popular culture thinks about to reconstruct something that I found interesting. You know, so sort of to use the things I find really mindless and distasteful to create something I found really beautiful and poetic.
Marc Jacobs is a genius because whether you love his clothes, you don't love his clothes, you love the presentation, you don't love the presentation, he sparks controversy, he sparks discussion. And I think any great artist of any level, to be able to invoke that kind of discussion is worthy of being talked about. His clothes were beautiful. I mean, it really took imagination and creativity and a real design element and design skill to pull that off and pull it off so well.
I don't know, are we kind of in a Marc Jacobs insane asylum, a couture insane asylum?
The thing is, he is a genius at putting on an amazing show, and at the same time there are the pieces that you could peel apart that really are some of the strongest pieces of the season. I mean, those skirts that had the big giant oversized paillettes are amazing. The shoes were amazing, kind of a wedgie snow boot that laces up the back. I mean, come on, it sounds too good to be true.
Well, I'd say the thing about Marc is that he always believes that fashion should have a warmth to it, and that means that it usually has a reference that we know but we haven't thought about in a while, and that takes us to a place that's nostalgic but twisted.
Beautiful. It's just beautiful. And I love those shoes. I mean, I loved all the things, but I know I can wear the shoes. It was just elegant, feminine and elegant and so beautiful.
There was lace, and then there was sort of peplums, and then there was polka dots, and that was played out through the stockings and the hat. And I mean, I think that texture just added an element of modernity to a little bit of a 50s silhouette, but something that felt very, very punk and modern too.
Before the show, a lot of people were talking about, well, what's it going to be? Someone said it's going to be 20 slappers, someone said it's going to be 70 secretary, and you just never know from him. But it's still always Marc Jacobs. It has those signature colors and those pieces that the girls want. I mean, there were sailor pants that were amazing with like a blouse that buttoned up the back that was very signature Marc Jacobs, but then it had sort of dot appliques on it.
This is what you can count on Marc, you know, he's really not somebody you can put in a box. You know, that's really what vision is about. We're not supposed to just keep doing things we've done before. And it's a little bit sometimes hard to articulate, especially with something that's so new. What are the words to describe it? What was new for him was Marc exploring these very shaped, sculptural, 40s, almost 50s type suiting. I don't feel like I've seen Marc explore that kind of femininity, you know, where the waist was really what was driving the whole silhouette. He executes it in the most kind of futuristic fabric, so there's kind of almost a retro hybrid futurism to it. There's just so much energy, and you get that when somebody's breaking walls and breaking ceilings on ideas, it creates a frisson. And so I'm kind of a little in the afterglow of the frisson of the show.
Marc, it always has to be fun. The clothes are already fabulous, so we try to make the makeup, you know, go with the clothes. So we came up with a very almost romantic, always a little bit decadent look.
Mine is the supporting part today. There's a few tendrils that are going to be brushing across the face as the girls move. So really, the little knots you're seeing are just like a supporting act to anchor these amazing hats that Marc and Stephen Jones have made.
We start always by doing fabrics, and again, we were looking at things that we hadn't done the fall before, and we're looking at very textured tweeds and paisleys and things that were, I guess, associated with kind of conservative dress.
To demystify the experience, it's about what inspires you through the process. So, you know, we created the fabrics came in and we were like, wow, what do we make out of them? And then when we started making things, we're like, wow, how do we show this? And then once you start seeing the girls dressed and talk to hair and makeup, then I'm like, wow, I can hear, you know, this remix from Oliver of Who Will Buy, and then the whole Dickensian thing made sense to me. And again, there was just, I don't know, bits of all of that.
I mean, I think the show is just so impressive with its imagination that you don't even sort of know where it comes from. And I just thought it was incredibly full of interesting, imaginative clothes.
I love the idea of Edwardian and another time, and I love the idea of fur coats, but I didn't want them to be worn as fur coats. I wanted them to be on the head. And then I worked with Stephen, and we created all these hats.
Working with Marc is wonderful, and we've done a wonderful hat extravaganza this season. Every girl has got a hat. Every hat is different, whether in color or in shape or in fabrication. It's very much as an enlarged volume, an enlarged proportion. There's something ever so slightly cartoon about it and whimsical about it, as every lovely hat should have a sense of fantasy.
I think really from his very earliest collections there's been a kind of levity and playfulness. There's something a little bit antic about it, even when actually the clothes can be reflecting perhaps a sort of darker mood or moment.
There was a kind of, I don't know, broody naivety to the crochet. There was a kind of humble, sort of sad, I don't know, almost poorness to it, but it was really elevated to this rich, cartoony. It would be like as if a cartoon animator was doing something moody.
I think he's just very connected to the pop culture, to the arts, and he follows his instincts and is very brave. He is not afraid, so he goes for it, and that's why he is where he is.
The only thing that one has come to expect is the unexpected, which is sort of great. I mean, he's just one of these designers who's constantly reinventing the wheel. I mean, his whole shtick is that it's an entirely new response to how he's feeling and the influences and his personal experiences and how he filters that into his collection, and it really changes every season. But I mean, there are still very identifiably Marc Jacobs.
We started looking at different references, this website, Advanced Style, which shows more mature women who really are fearless in their way of dress, and thought of contemporaries, my contemporaries, who are also fearless in their sense of self-expression, and also just some of the people who are really enthusiastic about fashion, who, you know, who weren't interested in plain or what was right or proper, but what was delightful and exciting and just mesmerizing in some way.